Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ricky and I'll be your administrator for today. And today's session is on-site process simulation in the age of experience. So this is the fifth webinar in our series as we count down to Digital Construction Week, which is taking place next week now on May 17th and 18th. We'll be on site at Digital Construction Week with our partners Dussel Systems. And we'd love to meet anyone who's attending to talk more about the topics we're discussing today. So if you're going to be attending, please get in touch, let us know, and we can book up a meeting. It'd be great to spend some time with you. But as for today's webinar, we've got two fantastic hosts for you today. We've got Sofian Sahi and Callum Ray, who are both digital manufacturing engineers at Prodtex, and they've got a wealth of experience in Delmia simulation for construction. But before we kick off for the topic in hand, I just wanted to quickly mention that we're going to have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So if any questions pop up during the course of the presentation today, please just type them into your question box and I'll collate them all and get them ready for Sofian and Callum at the end of the session. But with that said, I think that's enough from me. It's time to get started on the actual content for the webinar. I don't want to hold you up any longer, so I'm going to hand over to Sofian now, and we'll get started. So let me just pass you the ball, Sofian, and we can start with the main presentation if you're ready.
Thank you very much, Ricky. So yes, welcome everyone. Before we dive into the webinar, I'll tell you again a bit about Prodtex. So we are based in Euronorth. We've got offices in Sweden, in Norway, and here in the UK in Bristol. Our team in Sweden specializes mainly in automotive. Our Norway team mainly in infrastructure, steel bridges. And here in the UK, our focus is mainly aerospace and construction. The core of our business is Dussel Systems 3D Experience. We primarily use Delmia digital manufacturing solutions. We are a licensed provider, trainers, and expert consultants. We also work both in robotic and tooling design. One of our tooling solutions is called box joints. It's a type of reconfigurable tooling, and we hold a patent for. So today's webinar is the fifth on this series ahead of the Digital Manufacturing Week in London, as Ricky mentioned earlier, on the 17th and 18th of May. And we are going to be talking about on-site process simulation. We will take what we learned in a factory environment and try to apply it on-site. So again, 3D experience is the core of our business. It is a successor to CATIA V5 from Dussel Systems, same company that developed SolidWorks. And as I always like to describe it as a holistic platform where every single element is linked. It can serve lots of different elements of a manufacturing company, from research and development to production planning to dispatch. It provides a huge catalog of applications to enable users to design, simulate, and collaborate in real time. The platform, most importantly, makes data, the latest data, available to the right people within the organization. Okay, so in today's session, we will simulate a standard drywall partition, see how we're going to build it on site. We will look at resources, we'll do a bit of safety assessment and touch on material flow and logistics. Again, our usual starting point is to create a manufacturing bill of materials from the engineering bill of materials. We can shape this manufacturing bill of materials to suit our site's need. We use our item definition app within Delmia to do this. So to start with, we need to understand what kind of parts or assemblies are arriving to site. One of the simple straightaway values points we've seen with clients recently is that there is a visualization of the kits. So you can visually see the kits, and it makes it clear to all the teams. They know exactly what is arriving to site and in what form, in what state. If we are to make any adjustments to this kit, so that is not an issue at all. It's just a matter of drag and drop method to restructure this manufacturing bill of materials. So it's a very agile tool. And because this directly consumes the parts from the EBOM, it means again that any changes that are made to the design, we can see them and we can react very quickly to that change here. Right. So just to summarize on the MBOM, make or buy, we can visualize our kits. It's a single source of truth. Hopefully, if we go through this process, we would have a very good starting point to good data management. The devil is in the details. We'll look at every single part. That will help us down the road with the process. The EBOM to the MBOM transition is mistake proof because we need to consume every single element of the EBOM. And as such, it is proof. We cannot make mistakes if we do it that way. Right, so now if we move on to the process and for the build-up. So using the MBOM tools, we have now hopefully a simple takeoff, which gave us the ability to streamline purchase and delivery schedules. And I like to think about it this way. I mean, despite the lengthy and complex nature of construction projects, construction and manufacturing start converging. The operations become very similar when we adopt a process-oriented work breakdown instead of a deliverables-oriented work breakdown. So when a process-oriented work breakdown is adopted, we are getting closer and closer to mimicking manufacturing operations. Process engineers, we now are obsessed with time. They're obsessed with the detail. And their end goal is to make any given task as simple as it can be to ensure repeatability and efficiency and, of course, quality. So in order to achieve this, we break the gigantic task into very small chunks, and we gather data on every single step of the process. At the back of this, we would have captured data on the installation of this product. So we are capturing the know-how and we are making it available to everyone within the organization. We can produce now a detailed on-site build plan, which will help us to better manage risk, have a better control on our workflow, and as a whole, reduce the operational costs. And now I'm going to leave you with my colleague Callum, who's going to show us how we take all of this information and then apply it within the context of a building site.
Thank you very much, Sifin. Yeah, so as Sifin said there, kind of as I talked previously in the on-site module webinar we had, we can import various input data on our site into our simulation. Now, you might ask, well, why is this beneficial? Why don't I just use a drawing? Well, you can start at a drawing, but that drawing can be enhanced. You can then add in your 3D geometries. And again, but why should I bother adding in 3D geometries, especially on a traditional installation that I know inside and out, and my installation team know inside and out? Well, you can see areas for improvement. You can see pain points. Have you considered where your temporary offices are going? Have you considered where the relief facilities are going? Have you actually considered how busy that site's going to get once you've got the delivery of all your different components and the resource that you're going to need to lift that off the back of the truck and the resource you're going to need to get that onto the correct floor so the guys who are working for materials can get them on time? And that's where Delmia really shows its true colours. We can have any sort of resource you can think, whether it be a hand tool up to a tower crane and everything in between. We can add kinematics to them as well. So instead of a forklift just being there or moving to the correct position, you can actually see it going up and picking up the pallet from the back of the truck and delivering it to the drop-off area, and whether or not it's got enough turning space. But, we're pushing onto the resources here a little bit. If I could just double back to the site, how many times is there the correct data for the site? Whether that be, you can go and get a point cloud scan, or you take some OpenStreetMap data. The more data you put into this, the more beneficial it's going to be for you before you hit site. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind is, especially as we move on to our simulations and our equipment, is we're talking about a traditional wall here that people know inside and out and people have installed for years. But that doesn't mean that it can't be improved. That doesn't mean that it can't be optimized. Even if your company is not ready to move on to, say, a prefab option and you're still going to continue with traditional build, as we've got here, you can still use Delmia to optimize and improve. So when we're looking at site simulations, you can hopefully see in that video there, we have the build up, and it's not just another simulation softwares type of video where the parts just appear. We can have the move. You can see the actual install. We have the resources there. You can see how many people it takes to install one panel. We can have that analysis. We can even go deeper and have a reach analysis, so you can analyze whether the scissor lift you're planning on renting has enough capacity to take the amount of crew you need, including their tools, whether it can take the right height, whether you're looking at an articulated boom, whether it has the correct reach, whether you're going to be able to use it. The simulations go so far and wide. You don't need to necessarily be simulating the final product. You could use Delmia to simulate the process of getting the materials from the back of the truck up onto the correct floor using different methods, whether that's as I said before, a tower crane or a telehandler, maybe to some temporary scaffolding or a canty deck, or whether you use something like a buck hoist internal to the building and analyze how long it's going to take you to populate a floor with the right amount of materials for the team to finish it. Again, time, big one. The money doesn't come until you've completed that project, until you've got the sign off at the end from the customer. Again, so analyzing those critical paths, even though it's a traditional route, and there's people out there who could throw one up with their eyes closed. It's the logistics part of it which you might miss out, or there might be something you can give to your operator to increase their time. So, and that's something Delmia can do and will do for you if you give it the information. So you've heard me sort of talk a little about logistics, but why? Optioneering is the first one that comes to hand. Yes, it might be that you can get a mobile crane to lift your pallets onto the top of your building for the final floor, but that's more expensive than a telehandler that can do the same job. And you can look at other factors that go in there as well. So as you can see in that video, briefly there was a viewpoint from inside the telehandler. So it's all well and good that the telehandler can reach, but you also need somebody on the top there to tell the telehandler whether they're clear to lower it down and whether they've reached it. Whereas, a mobile crane might not necessarily have that issue, and a tower crane certainly does. But again, you're increasing your costs. So you can do these simulations to visualize which resources you can use, and use that evidence to formulate which resource you're going to go and actually get for a site. Because, for example, an extra 200 steps a day over a 12-month project is about 30 miles wasted of time and energy, and that time is time that you're paying somebody, so that can equate to hundreds of thousands of pounds in man hours. So it's extremely important that you're not just bringing your supplies to site and just dropping them anywhere. You're actually optimizing where that's happening and where your loading and unloading activities are happening. Lastly, again, we're talking about traditional, and we're talking about something that, there's people out there in the field who do this day in, day out. But what's not necessarily assessed is how much damage is potentially being done to them. As the construction sector is growing to a trend to look into worker safety and stuff like repetitive strain, that's something Delmia can help with again. So we can analyze reach, we can analyze access. We can also do ergonomic postural score on these reaches and these access, which will determine whether or not you need to look at that access or whether or not it's okay. You can, if it's a one-off activity, you might be able to mitigate it with a few bits of material, or it might just be mitigate the fact that it's an activity that happens once per day. But if you're looking at somebody installing a channel to the roof, and you can see in the top right there, our example isn't quite reaching that roof there, maybe you need to go and invest in a larger scissor lift so they can get closer, so that they're not having to raise their hand up constantly, because that could be 100 fixings into that channel. And if you've got times that by however many walls on a floor, times that by how many floors, that's a highly repeated task. You can also sign off some of the processes before it hits sites, and that's a big thing. That's something that sort of goes across everything we've been talking about today, is because you've got this data and you're simulating it before you've built your product, you can assess this before people and materials hit site. So you're not wasting time there. You're not you're not wasting money by having people waiting around and somebody can't come in once the build has started to sign it off. You can also evaluate blind spots and viewpoints. Again, the upper channel on a traditional wall can be a little bit more complex when you've got considering the compression loads from the slab above. And especially in tricky corners, maybe you want to see if a worker can actually see what they're doing, or if they're going to be doing it by feel, or if they can actually get their tool in there and see what they're doing. So again, that's something that Delmia can do, and that's something that's we find a lot of customers are very interested in now, is this worker safety and ergonomics tool that we offer. So in conclusion, with our traditional install, we're capturing the installation know-how, whether that be to use it as a benchmark for further simulations if you're moving on to, say, a prefab product and you want to validate the prefab against the traditional, or if you just want to capture the people who do it in and out, their knowledge, their expert knowledge before they leave the industry, and you have new people coming in who aren't as quick and don't take to the installation process as quickly because that expert knowledge is gone. You can clearly communicate methods, and nothing is more clear than a visual representation, especially in the construction field. Sometimes text just isn't going to cut it. If you try and write down how to install a traditional wall and gave it to me, I know I would struggle, and so that visual representation really helps. And sort of seeing where parts come from. It's not just the parts appear. You can see where they get picked up from and which pallet you may need to go to. You can also then take this, so you can see that in the background, sort of the videos and photos, has been an installation of one. You can scale that up. So once you know the time for one, you can then scale that up across your whole floor, across a wing, across levels, across different buildings that maybe have the same wall. So we've, in our simulations at back, we've maybe had building A, and building B is going to use the same in traditional walls. We can take the process and the embalm and the timing across because we already know it and it's captured within 3D Experience, and quickly and rapidly redeploy it. Again, another big one is that optioneering on site, so you can determine which resources you really need and which ones you don't, and where you can put your costing into. And yeah, that is the conclusion for the traditional on-site. So it's not just got a singular use, you can use it for benchmarking, or you can use it for capturing that know-how. Thank you for listening. So that's been our on-site prefab process, simulation in the age of experience. I hope you'll all be around to join us on the 11th of May for our Delmia digital simulation for on-site microfactories, which will continue on from this webinar, and we'll dive into the prefab of panelized product on site. And again, if you can't make that one, please request a recording. And you can see we've got one more before digital construction week after that, which is implementing on-site prefab optioneering with Delmia's digital solution. Now, if you've heard what we've been talking about today and thought, I'd love to give that a go myself, I'm quite interested. We offer a free month, no commitment of 3D Experience on the cloud for £500. So for £500 for 3 months and no commitment, you can get access to the apps and roles that we use to create the simulation and the material that you see in the slides today. And yeah, there's no commitment because we're pretty certain that once you've had a play with it yourself and seen the value that it can bring to you, that you're probably going to want to, take it on board to your company. And then that's where the next slide comes in, where we can sell you all the licenses and the apps and roles from 3D Experience that we've used, and we offer our expert level training. So our experts within our team can train people up to use Delmia to go through MBOM, to go through process, to develop those simulations to get your site moving like you saw in the background. Equally, if you don't want to do it, but you still want those simulations, we do, as we talked at the start, we do consultancy work, so you can engage with us to get some of those simulations done for you. And without further ado, thank you very much. I'm going to hand back to Ricky now.
Thank you very much, Callum. Thank you, Sofian. That was really good presentation. I was really impressed with everything you guys had to share. Hopefully everyone in the audience was impressed with it as well. I think there's some great demos of the power of 3D Experience and what you can do with some of the simulation there. So yeah, I enjoyed it. So hopefully everyone else did as well. Before we move on to the questions, obviously, if anyone has any additional questions, there's still time to put them in the question box, and I'll get through as many as we can in the time we've got left. But just to point out, I've put in the chat box, I put some links to the next webinar in our series if you want to sign up for that one, and also to access the previous webinars that we've already given. So there's a landing page you can go on and you can request to get the replays of those other webinars there if you want to see the previous ones if you've missed anything. But yeah, without further ado, should we move on with the questions? So the first one I've got here is asking, how did you generate the map data? Was much work required to create that in 3D at the correct scale? So I don't know, which one of you actually created that demo? Was that you, Callum, or Sofian? Or?
Yes, I created that one.
Nice. So how was it? That was imported, that map data, right?
It was very easy. Actually, if you go to OpenStreetMap, export a region of the map that you're interested in as an OSM file, import it into 3D Experience. It probably took about 3 minutes to generate that, as long as you've got your design scale set right, i.e. large scale. You just need to match the scale of the OSM data with the one in 3D Experience. And yeah, it was a matter of minutes really to generate that model.
Awesome. Oh, that's fantastic. And then you just align your site within the correct position on the map and you're good to go, right?
Exactly. I mean, the information you can get from that is invaluable. Just look at access, at routes, at bridges, around your site. and you've got very accurate information there that'll save you a huge amount of traveling to site, lots of visits to be able to do that traditionally, I think. So yeah, no, it's a great tool.
Yeah, fantastic. Great. On to the next one. Here's a question was, can you perform clash detection when installing the product on site?
Do you want to take it, or shall I?
Yeah, we can take it in parts if you like, Callum.
Go for it.
You can absolutely do that. It's an option that you can turn on or off, and you can definitely do clash detection. You can do it with the products, but also with the equipment. If you are simulating your telehandler and it suddenly touches the platform where it's not supposed to be, then it will notify you, and then you can take it from there. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Callum, to that?
Yeah, so you can have that nice simple where it will inform you of a clash detection. It also has a capability where you can insert what's known as probes, and these probes will measure the distance. So if you know that, say for example, the gap to load the wall in is quite tight, and you're a bit worried that the sort of width of the wall is too wide for the door, you can set a probe up and define, and it will tell you how close an edge will get to another edge. It's probably more useful for sort of boxes, kind of squeeze through doors, but that's extremely useful. It will give you sort of a distance per time of how close that gets to the edge. And again, that can be invaluable if you have something that's really tight and you cannot change the access to it at all.
Great, fantastic. One more question here. This one's about like the resources. So I was asking, do all of the cranes, scissor lifts, etc., come with the software, or do you need to create these as well?
I think this is quite a good question, and it probably resonates with these webinars quite a lot. Traditionally, you'd find it very hard to find models especially from manufacturers of their equipment, of the cranes and everything. But now, as BIM is becoming massive and a lot more utilized in the construction sector, we're seeing a lot more manufacturers offer up their products in CAD files. So, you can import the sort of raw step files or whatever format they come in, but what you will need to do to set them up in Delmia is you'll need to add the kinematics. Now, for the first one, that might take some time, but once the glory of 3D experiences, once you've set up, your X manufacturer tower crane, and once you've given it all the kinematics and home positions, that is captured for every single simulation you do after that. So the 1 hour, 2 hours to set it up the first time becomes 5 minutes just to find it from inside your cloud and drop it into your simulation, and it retains all that previous data. So when you put joints onto it, so it can rotate and the hook and everything, that's all retained. So it can take time to build up your resource pool, but once you do, you speed up infinitely.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing as well is like you need it's worth thinking about what your actual requirements are and how much detail you actually need, because obviously, what we do, we have like some generic resources, like generic cranes that aren't from a specific manufacturer and they're parametric, so you can basically just input a few parameters and adjust the size and the reach of the crane to meet your needs. And then we can use that for like basic simulations. And then once you get to the point where you've actually selected your final crane, then you could bring in the real geometry of that actual crane as a final validation. So it kind of, I guess it will depend. Do you really need the actual 100% model with all the to the millimeter measurements to start with? It's always worth thinking about that, I guess.
Exactly, yeah.
Great, and then I've got one final question here. Apologies, I'm not sure if I'm interpreting this correctly, so if I get this wrong at all, please feel free to clarify it in the Q&A box for us. So the question is, it's about the platform, and it's asking where we can combine between the 3D simulation and the supervision. So I interpret that one as basically what the links are between doing your 3D simulation and then actually that installation process happening on site, right? The actual people performing the work, and if there's a way to link like the actual process, maybe like the work instructions or the process requirements or things like that back to your 3D simulation. Apologies if I'm misinterpreting that, but that's the way I take that question. So what do you guys think of that?
I need to think about this one.
Yeah. So for me, I think like there's definitely
so
definitely
yes,
possible once you go on, Sofian, sorry.
Yes, yes. So there's a little bit of a lag in here. There is a few ways to do it. As you mentioned, Ricky, work instructions are what are we going to use to communicate this to the shop floor or to the site. And instead of having, like Callum mentioned earlier, SOPs with lots of text that nobody would read, you can have this displayed on a screen on a web browser, and it becomes very easy for the guys to look at it and to learn it, and everyone knows what they are doing, where they are doing it, and how long it should take them. The other facets of it, which is supervision, then everyone can use Delmia. They don't need to be technical people. They can use their dashboard, what we call dashboards, and they can have all sorts of information in there. For example, they can have their KPIs on on what's happening on site, what's being reported, QDCP board in there, but we can have your also use it to communicate, and we just use simple boards, and then it's available to everyone. So yeah, I hope that's answered the question. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer, and I think as well, I think something that Sophia mentioned before about the platform being like a holistic platform, and this data that you're generating, these simulations, I think can drive kind of all aspects of the life cycle of your construction, from initial concept right through to actually performing the construction. So it's things like doing the ergonomic analysis that was shown before. That should be driving the requirements for the health and safety standards and limitations that are produced on site, because you're validating there exactly what is the accepted procedure, and then you can basically transpose that data directly into your work instructions and your health and safety requirements. And basically everything you're doing and simulating should be driving towards either clarifying or defining a process for the actual construction, whether it's ruling out one of two options, or identifying the most efficient way to do something, or what they all should be leading towards that. And that's kind of, I think that's one of the key things with this. The power of this kind of simulation is to make sure that you are only using it where it's necessary, where it's going to give you a key piece of information that's going to improve your final construction process or product, or whatever it is you're working on. And I think one of the risks is it's easy to over simulate and to do too much. And I think that's where, like, with experience and knowing your product well, you can start to identify what are the key issues to simulate. Great, and I think that's pretty much it for the questions we've got today. And I think we're pretty much out of time now. So the only final thing really is to say thank you very much to Callum and Sofian for your time today, for putting this together for us. And thank you everyone for attending. As was mentioned previously, the next webinar is on Thursday. So there's a link in the chat to sign up for that one if you're interested. And I'd love to get all of your feedback on this session. If you have any comments or would like any further clarity, please feel free to reach out with us and get in touch with us. Our contact details are on the screen there. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.